cast them. So that's a bit of banter for you all. But as we get into second pick and ban phase, we're highlighting through this one. I mean, that's a quick Diana, Renekton. We have Tarzan on something again that needs a couple of levels to start getting in these lanes.
Yeah, level 6 kind of that point where Diana starts to have a lot more impact. But the Renekton here, you know, EDG, they could pick the Tahm, but if they don't take it here, you have the opportunity to ban it away, potentially a better lane for Ale, and able to flex it in this situation. It's no surprise to see the Thresh come through. I wouldn't also be surprised to see a jungler because, you know, we saw a lot of them banned away in the second rotation. We could have a similar situation. So if they want a priority pick for Jiejie here, I take it now. There's things like the Trundle open, the Volibear as an option, so they'll just lock those in. And now LNG get this nice third pick where they can decide what they want to prioritize. They could take a bot laner if they want to try and make sure they have something decent there. Or honestly, in this situation, you just take a mid and then ban away picks for Scout and put Icon in a really comfortable position.
Well, we might just be going back, though, instead. I mean, for Light, this has been a pickup that he, in particular, has been favoring. Aux, I know you talked about it before, especially with the Leona in par. We see no Leona this time, but the Ashe, as we get to 0, we're going to hold it. Let's just assume it's been locked in again.
Yeah, I think... I don't mind the Ashe into Aphelios. I think that's okay. I just think that Leona isn't the best sort of support to pair up when you're going into the Thresh. I think that was kind of the thing for me. Honestly, I feel like the Nautilus could have been better because it's a lot of supports here as a good matchup in the Thresh. And also, you can't cleanse a Nautilus, right? You ult the Aphelios, and there's nothing he can really do to prevent that. So I think that might end up making more sense. You see LNG, they're looking to ban away some Scouts pick. And EDG, I think targeting support makes the most sense in this situation, but they're actually going to start off with an AD carry pick. And I think Lucian makes sense, right? You have an AP jungler in that Diana. You need priority for Diana, not so much because you're one of those picks like a Nidalee who wants to invade, but because you just want to survive. Kind of similar to what we saw from the Gwen. You want to survive to that level 6 point, and then you have that agency to sort of dive in.
I wonder where else you go, though, because LNG are also banning away mid laners. Scout, Silas, a very big pick. The LeBlanc as well. If you guys don't know, LPL has amazing LeBlancs, and I know over in the LCK, there are amazing LeBlancs there as well. But I'm talking Scout, Rookie, Icon as well, funnily enough, and actually an actual historically great LeBlanc too. We can talk about Knight, what we saw at the MSC back a couple of years ago too. There's a lot there to kind of break down, but mid laners are off the board. Point being that EDG, if they don't go for the support as you talked about here, Aux, they're going to bat away to the mid laner. They've gotten rid of Dagda's calling of the Hasaki fall, which Icon has picked up once alongside Tarzan's Diana.
And I think this might be a situation where they're not banning supports because they expect LNG to maybe go for the Leona option again. And I mean, I don't think EDG care if Lwandy goes Leona here. It would make sense to pick up the support here in this situation just so that you have that flexibility. So you still have that counter pick option for the mid laner. You know you're going up against Thresh, and they actually pick up the set. So this could be mid, this could be support, has that flexibility open and available. So it's still kind of hard to call right now, which is kind of the strength of taking a flex pick there. But the big thing for me is that Tahm Kench is still open and available. You know, EDG took up last time at this point. The Orianna is still an option. They could just go in a very similar direction if they wanted to right now. We'll see what they end up deciding on.
Is it going to be a scaling option though? Azir. All right, Orianna was open, didn't want to take it. Just says Azir into the possible set.
Yeah, so I think a big factor with the Azir is it's very good at shutting down these sort of short-range opponents, right? You see Diana flying in, Emperor's Divide, she's out of here. And as long as Scout's going to be able to do that, he can help keep Vipers safe. Plus, in these matchups, you know, up against the likes of a Set or a Renekton, which, you know, may not be the mid lane matchup, they could still put that Set in the support role, but you have that ability to achieve priority. There's not many lanes that can actually contest an Azir really, and he has that mobility to keep himself safe as well. They do end up just going for that Tahm Kench top lane. No real surprise there. There's no reason not to pick it.
Well, his diet is expensively unique as we look for the last pick onto LNG. For game 2, what's it going to be? Icon has played this so many times, and if this is picked up, it means that we will be seeing that set to the top lane most likely. We'll just wait a couple more seconds, and there we go. So Aux comp's a little bit different this time. I want to say for both teams, there is a hell of a lot of dive for both EDG and LNG.
Yeah. I think more so LNG. I think EDG have like the frontliners who can do stuff, but you know, I see an Azir, I see an Aphelios. I'm like, you have to deal them, right? And the composition of LNG is very short range. That, you know, Ashe and Ryze aren't exactly the picks you think of as like super long range carries, and there's never going to be a point where they can hit Scout or Viper and they're not able to be hit back, and that's kind of the concerning thing. I think similarly what we're seeing here is that EDG, if we hit those later game points, if there's a front to back fight, they are clean sailing and they're fine with that. But I think here LNG have more tools to lean into flank angles, to lean into those heavy dive options. They have so many frontliners to work with. I think things could end up being tricky. And critically, Jiejie on the Volibear instead of the Olaf, not as much sustained damage in extended fight compared to just being able to run people down. But either way, I think LNG are faring better in this matchup, in this draft, but I still think there's definitely some issues if they kind of just have a slow early game. I think we want to once more see a bit more momentum from them, particularly in that mid game.
We do, and I think coming back to it as well, I just want to point out that at least for LNG this time around, you know, you've got Diana, you've got a Ryze as well. You do have options for scaling damage in this game, but you're definitely right with how we're seeing the comp pan out for LNG. Second time around, let's see them get on the board and not let the Azir, the Aphelios hit late game. Hell, even Tahm Kench as well, with what we started to see from Flandre. EDG are the controlled team. They always have been. It feels like they always will be. I compared them to TSM before because EDG have been the winningest team, which, I'm sorry, LEC, probably not a word, but I'm going to steal it from you for the time being. Where for LNG, they're kind of the upstarters. They're a team that's rebranded in 2019 and coming from Snake Esports, they want to go higher than they've ever been before. And it's EDG that stands in their way for their last series of the split. Welcome back to Summoner's Rift as EDG are one game away from locking in top 2 and giving themselves a full-on bye. Just remember, LPL playoffs in spring, you saw this. Top 4 was such an advantage, but top 2, you don't even have to worry about King of the Hill Orcs. He goes straight over to the double E limb.
Yeah, it makes things so much easier. And on top of that, if EDG come out of this series with 2-0, or I mean just a win in general, then when they play FPX later this week, it puts them on even footing. The winner of that will claim first. If they did end up losing this series, things get a little bit more tenuous and a little bit more difficult in terms of just catching up with the game score of FPX. So very important to sort of claim this one, claim this victory to put themselves in the best spot for getting first, on top of, as you said, securing second. We do see both junglers starting on that top side. Tarzan just going for the Raptors, and they will be pathing towards bot, which means priority going to be pretty important. The thing is, I feel like Scout on this Azir going to be pretty comfortable achieving early priority. But the bot lane, I think there's more threat from Lwandy level 1. But we already saw that Nash is so good at pushing the lane in. So I think it makes sense that Tarzan wants to lean towards his bot lane to look for that. Because in top side, we're seeing Flandre. You know, this is kind of different to how the lane went last game, where we saw Ale doing pretty okay in the early levels. Yep. This is now Flandre who's just applying the pressure.
I mean, he's hit level 2 first. That's why the Abyssal Dive Ale narrowly getting out. Turret shot actually in favor of Ale, but the tongue lash gives great sustain. That's the biggest pain for me, Orcs. That sustain now in the kit, even more so with the Q. Means every time he hits it, trading gets better and better, and Flandre already bullying out Ale in the top lane.
Yeah, it's like he hits the tongue lash, he heals himself, he deals damage to you. You know, if you hit him, he has, not yet, but at level 3 has the great health to heal himself. Just so hard to bully Tahm Kench out of lane because he's very good at trading. But even if you win the trade, he's just going to sustain back up, and that's why it's such a frustrating lane opponent to go up against. And a big thing that actually came down to nerf.
Ooh. That's big. That's actually really big. Ale has already forced a flash from him. Abyssal Dive out, but he matches it. Big brain not letting him get out, but the shield is enough.
Flandre.
Waiting for another grass. I mean, Flandre making that closer than we expected.
Yeah, I think Ale just kind of running out of cooldowns towards the end of that, but still applying that pressure, finding those windows to punish the Tahm Kench. There's not many, I'll be honest, but he did find one, and ooh, good help from Meiko, but he might be in trouble now.
That's Icon coming down. EDG have to back away as Gravitum onto Meiko, and the damage, excuse me. It ain't Gravitum, it's an orb that comes through as Icon makes that TP worthwhile with the first blood.
Yeah, and honestly, a really nice play from Lwandy. You saw he actually waited for Meiko's flash to follow up. And that was a favorable play for EDG initially. Meiko finds a hook on a light, gets that cleanse, but instantly we see LNG in a position to cover that over-aggression. Now, the downside is, although Icon got that kill, definitely won't complain. He is missing a bit of a wave mid, but we do see Tarzan just move over to collect that. We did see that bot side scuttle picked up for LNG, thanks to... sorry, no, that was actually picked up by Jiejie, never mind. So we're talking about potentially leaning towards getting that scuttle for Tarzan, but he was actually challenged on this, as we do see the replay. But yeah, this is Lwandy going for that really nice flash face breaker and still catching Meiko after he uses his flash to secure that one. And it's super important when you're committing that TP already to make sure of it. But while this was all going on, we saw Jiejie, because they were both pathing from top to bot, Jiejie actually challenged Tarzan on that bot side scuttle, then pathed up top side and picked up that top scuttle as well. So not ideal for the Diana to get double scuttle in this situation.
No, definitely not, but doing okay for CS because he picked up the mid wave, so I guess apples and oranges, but you are right about the EXP advantage. Level 5 for Jiejie, Tarzan now backing at the same time as the Volibear, so we'll have a bit of a lead here in the jungle for now on the side of EDG. But I want to point back to what we're talking about once again. LNG getting started. This is a much better adaptation because the Ryze picks up the kill. His laning phase returning back to normal. Bottom as well, keeping up in CS. And we did talk about Diana hitting 6, which is 2 levels away. That Tarzan can start moving the map as well.
Yeah, that's when you get more agency. And a big thing as well is that Icon, when he's got a bit more mana behind him, that's when he can kind of contest the priority of the Azir, because he can just essentially shred through the waves quite quickly. He has that tear in pocket, he has that sapphire crystal, and he's getting levels into his Q, which really contribute to being able to just shred through the minions coming towards you. See now both teams kind of trying to play around that river and secure control. But again, you're still kind of playing defensive for LNG. It's really at that level 6 point for Tarzan, as we've been talking about endlessly, where we can start to see him have a bit more impact in. Yeah, that's the wave player we're talking about from Icon. Just obliterates the wave.
And now he's 6 as well. You know, another ulti that we have to look out for is that Realm Warp around the early objectives. Dragon's now up. Herald's up in a couple of minutes as well. Icon's going to be quite influential to bringing the set in, to bringing Tarzan in, even Ale if he's a part of it. There's a lot more you could do in this composition with LNG than what we saw in game number 1.
Yeah, I think having those flank angles with the Realm Warp is really valuable, particularly for things like Renekton, which kind of struggle to sort of engage, or Set, who, when you're behind, you can like ult someone into your team to find that angle. Now, do you see EDG able to sort of look for that early dragon? Support lane feeling a lot more comfortable, with a couple of levels behind them. But I expect to see LNG once more setting their sights on that Herald when it does spawn up.
Minute 30 to go there as well. Wait for the supports to start moving up. That's when you know it's a sign. As Meiko going to use this opportunity to get rid of Deep Vision. First Dragon goes over to EDG. And Icon, I love that you pulled out the wave clear. He's just blasting these, going down so quickly, giving ample opportunity for him to move into enemy jungle and just play that war of attrition with Vision. Deep control ward there that you love to kind of spot. And we've only got a minute to the Herald as well, so that ward going to give a lot of information for supports roaming, for Jiejie's positioning as well, as Tarzan's starting to be cheeky with the blue buff.
Yeah, and remember, Tarzan recalled at level 4 when Jiejie was level 5. And Jiejie's still level 5 and Tarzan's now level 6. He's just gained so much experience. He's been clearing super fast. And critically, Jiejie spent his time doing the dragon while Tarzan took that top scuttle crab. And now he's at that level 6 point. He knows that he's going to have support from Icon consistently at this point. The Ryze, just as we've been talking about, can almost permanently move. And as a result, Tarzan can start to play the game a little bit more now.
On a ward there for Icon as we pan back. Icon backing away so smartly as Scout was also on the way with Emperor's Divide. Realm Warp was used there, Aux. I don't know where Icon used it, but just an ulti to be aware about that is now down as Herald is spawning in 15 seconds. So not that it has the biggest range at this level, but if they need to get out of pinch, Icon is not going to have that tool to use.
Yeah, I think he might just ulted back mid to get there sooner. Focused on farming, but yeah, it doesn't mean that isn't available necessarily if they want to go for something. I don't think it has the greatest in combat value. Sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes it's like, what can you really do with it? But very much it was sort of like they looked for that window to challenge in the blue. They didn't find it. They kind of just back off. And both teams kind of come from now. But the Herald is up and Meiko looking.
Now he's already gotten the play, waiting for the death sentence. Not available by the looks of it. Jiejie came in as well. Long range hook, though, eventually winds up good. As Lwandy going to get dove on the turret, dismayed for now. But the enchant across the arrow turnaround was unfortunately not the right timing, as the turret only just came back up and available. But a nice defense from LNG, while EDG put everything into the bot lane.
Yeah, it was actually really hard to find a target there because Light has cleanse. So you hook him and he's just instantly going to cleanse it and you kind of wasted your play. But Lwandy is set. I think as you saw there, kind of hard to kill, even as a supporter, even as level 5, just that shield coming out. making him almost immortal at this point if you don't have the damage to commit. And there, you know, they shut down the tower temporarily, but they didn't really have much more to offer. And in that time, Tarzan again just been farming up, and now has a pretty solid lead in the jungle. This is kind of what you want coming out of the early game on the Diana. And now I think he can just look to play towards that Herald on the top side. I don't think EDG really in a position to challenge.
Well, not for now. Meiko's backing away. I wonder if he starts roaming up towards the top side. You can see from base, that's his direction for now, but Jiejie's also backing. LNG, however, haven't started it. There's backs multiple here from Tarzan too. And just note that Flandre is going to clear out the vision. Abyssal Dive used very aggressively to get behind enemy lines. Ping's getting slapped down as well. So no Herald yet. We're just talking about the idea, but I feel like we are building up to, you know, a potential window, right? Because, again, you already talked about LNG trying to build momentum in this game. Herald is the best tool for building momentum and giving early access to gold so that you can drive the tempo up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is, if LNG have an advantage in this game, it's very easy for them to be first on the objective. And if they're first on the objective and EDG have to face check, they have tanks to do so, which obviously gives them a lot of strength, but it opens up so many flank angles. It's kind of like as the enemy team pushes in to your territory, you fan out and then can encircle and get things like the Diana behind, the Renekton. So it definitely puts you in a comfortable spot. And now Jiejie is going to start the Herald up, but you can see they're so cautious about actually committing to this one. Jiejie is now going to start it up, but you can see that Tarzan is in vicinity to contest it, and he's so concerned he doesn't want to commit to this and get caught out in a fight, so he will just back away.
And all the way away as well. Tarzan's still not starting it up. Feels like he's going into the pit now as Icon clears out the wave. Teleport available for this Ryze, and Arlo's just pushed top. Flandre would have to TP in to make the commitment, so for EDG, it's just back to their own waves. Dragon's coming up in 40 seconds, and they're the ones setting up vision in the bottom side instead.
I think we saw Lwandy start to move up river, and that's part of the reason EDG backed away, because Meiko wasn't in a position to move then and there. And so now EDG, they know that they have Meiko coming from base. They feel a bit more comfortable, but at this point, Herald's already gone. It's too late. And LNG, they pulled off the heist.
Yeah, a good one though, right? Because now you've got a lot of options of where you can put it. We've seen Icon hard shoving this mid wave. The Ryze already with 1 kill, who's 20 CS behind, mind you, is close to picking up his first item. Maybe EDG know. Orcs, maybe they're aware of something. They're all going in. Away from the Realm Warp. He had to flash. He was dead if he tried to take it.
Yeah, I mean, the ult was going to come through from Scout, but it's a trade of flashes. So I think, although this does put more vulnerability on Icon, who doesn't have that mobility in his kit, it does mean that it is an even trade of summoners. But I want to see EDG look to capitalize on that again later before that cooldown is up and available. For now, though, LNG will just head down and start up that dragon. And with, you know, the Emperor's Divide down, I think they're feeling pretty comfortable in this situation. Securing this Infernal Dragon, equalizing in terms of dragons overall. Fortunately, it's another Cloud Soul, so yes, a little bit less of a priority. But still, for the side of LNG, they're in a comfortable spot. And in this game, I would actually like to see the Herald thrown down mid. What we often see teams do is you throw the first Herald mid, you get 2 plates. The second Herald you throw down, you take the tower. And I think the reason that's so important is because you're against an Azir, right? And if you're not getting that tower off Heralds, you're really going to struggle to take that mid tier 1, just because he can literally set up a fortress there and just consistently just plow through waves that come near him. Very difficult target to dive as well.
Massive wave clear, and again, I just want to see LNG bust up Icon, or at least not bust it. What's the word I'm looking for? Beef him up. There we go. Because Icon is the strongest person on LNG, and as we finally get it towards mid, Orcs, your prayer or wish or whatever you want to call it has been answered. EDG bringing the boys to defend this one. There's 3 members here. LNG getting forced off. Herald is going to get, you know, a little bit distracted, and it doesn't get a charge. First Herald not getting a charge is like going to Christmas dinner and someone's already eaten it all before you got there.
The turkey's missing. Honestly, the turkey's not
That's
there,
right.
and LNG can't be happy with that one. Bit of a disaster. Bit of a disaster, especially since this now means the second Herald taking down that mid-tier 1 isn't really a possibility anymore. So just a big fumble. And I think the thing for LNG is if you throw down the Herald before the wave's there, enemy team will respond, right? If they'd push that second wave in and then throw the Herald down, there's nothing EDG can really do to stop it. They can engage on you, sure, but the Herald will still do its job. But I think they just kind of pulled the trigger a little bit too soon, because they were like, okay, Scout's not here. Quickly, gotta get it down. And then it just backfired massively because EDG were there to respond. And again, this is what we saw game 1 from EDG. Not the most aggression, not the most sort of taking fights to LNG, but good defensive play to slow down the pace of the game.
Box coming through there as well. Lwandy at half HP. Meiko maybe thinking something more was going to happen, but Viper pulls away, and that's the end of the play. And you're right, bringing it back to game 1, EDG were able to quell pretty much everything LNG shoved at them. Now, this game has been a little bit more proactive, but it's still slowed down. 14 minutes in, 1 kill. I don't want people falling asleep, Aux, before our next series, because this is an important series. It means so much for playoffs. Next series could be really bloody since it's an IG series, and, you know, that's like Christmas coming together as well. We're in for a fun night, and, you know, we saw a lot of action evolve in game number 1 where EDG felt comfortable as through the wave. Oh, God, this keeps happening. But coming back to it, let me finish my point. I mean, we're getting a slow early game again. I am just waiting for the point where EDG switch on once more and say, right, 2 items. Now we fight again because we're not in threat of losing Dragon, and it's a Cloud Soul once again. Yeah,
they can really take this one slow if they want to, which I'm hoping. I know Hysterics, you're hoping too. They don't opt to take this one super slow, but we did see us at 2-item point where they kind of went, right, let's sort of play the game now. But, oh, they are looking for something here.
Okay, that's a big dive onto Icon. No, Realm Orb, he's busted against the turret. And Scout Soldiers do the rest. There's a kill over to Jiejie, and EDG getting positivity in the mid lane.
And look at that summoner on Icon, that flash, about 30 seconds, even less than that available. This was EDG burning that summoner earlier, and then them returning to take advantage of it. So that setup that they went for when we saw Icon flash away, this is the cost of it in the long run. It's only a kill. It's not exactly going to drastically change the game, but it's nice to see these little windows of positivity from EDG where they know they can challenge. And Icon, there's very little you can do here, especially when your realm was already burned. But, I mean, against the Volibear, Tower's not going to help you. You have no flash. As soon as the stun comes in, it's over.
Absolutely over. Scout almost picking up the kill, but it is over to Jiejie in the end. Another kill bites the Dusters. LNG return back to what we saw in game 1. Head up to the top side and bully Flandre out. Not a dive, but it'll get the first turret blood over to LNG. That's something in a small window of this game.
Yeah, and, you know, it's definitely not bad that they're getting that extra gold in, but we're still kind of missing that element where LNG are starting to make things happen. And this mid tower is starting to actually suffer. It's kind of been this ebb and flow between the mid laners where there was, you know, early level Scout had complete priority, then Icon was just able to obliterate waves, and now Scout has the Ludens, has the extra wave play, has the extra mana pool. He is kind of just able to push up and threaten. And I think critically, Icon being flashed us very much meant he wasn't really able to step too far forwards. I mean, the fact that he dies on a tower kind of shows if you're not safe on a tower, you're definitely not safe stepping up.
Light's getting bullied in the meantime. The Viper just feeling confident, throwing out his ulti. Light's going to stick around. He has the enchant across the arrow, but remember, there's a cleanse on top of Viper as well. So as he pushes this turret down, Light has to be careful. Dark Passage taken. Out they go. There's a dragon there. Guys, let's hope we see some blood. 2 kills in 17 minutes. Not my LPL. I don't care, Aux, about the comps. You've set them out so nicely today, or tonight so far, so thank you for that. But I just want action. And LNG, maybe they're going to give it to me as Tarzan doesn't get the Pale Cascade. It is actually a Moon Strike. Wait, no. It's a Crescent Strike. As EDG on the side. LNG not committing. Dragon sits there and waits for who's going to take it.
I think EDG, they've taken prio mid. They're actually threatening this tower bot lane. They're kind of comfortable with this arrangement if Viper can just take this one, but I think actually has to back away, but now they can move in. And for LNG, remember what we set up is that they want to find backline access and flanks, and they are looking for it.
Oh, there's the arrow onto Meiko. It's a good target here because the rest of LNG are on the way, blasted out, while Viper's under turret by himself and exploded. Down goes the turret in the meantime as well, while Scout was the one to pick that up. This is the race, but I think for LNG, finally, we get to see some tempo.
And this is exactly what you talked about coming out of draft, is with this Ryze, they can go for those creative engages, those creative angles. They're able to pick apart EDG's bot lane because EDG, we're very split setting up for that one. They find the engage, they get 2 kills, they're able to pick up the dragon, and now they're looking for that bot lane tier 1 as well. This is the pace we were hoping for out of the mid game of LNG. We're finally starting to get the ball rolling.
Okay, the catfish caught out. Flashes away. Flandre gets face breaking anyway. There's the moonfall. back against the wall. It's fishing time with no Abyssal Dive to get out. And LNG with kill number 4. Now it's really pushing. This turret goes down on top of that, and LNG with a 3k gold lead at 19 minutes.
Yeah, and this Realm Morph sets things up very well. I actually like the fact that, you know, he burns the cleanse from Viper because he knows Meiko, slow by the Ashe, no way he's getting away. And then the rest of the team comes in, and yeah, no way Viper outplays that one.
No way. You can't get out of that when everyone dives on top of you. And EDG losing their AD carry and their top laner in the same fell swoop. Herald is there, but let's ignore that for the time being. Way too close to Baron spawning for anyone to start it now. And I guess that's what we'll be talking about next, Aux. You know, 2 dragons for LNG. They've got a 3k gold lead. They do have control in this game finally. And they're hitting towards 2 items. But we have to also remember that Baron is a very real possibility with this composition. A comp that does want to make sure the next 10 minutes are the most impactful.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much Baron DPS. And again, what LNG can do is they have such a strong, such strong side laners. Like Icon can just go on the side lane, push up the wave pretty heavily on the Ryze. And then once that wave is kind of deep and someone has to deal with it, you can then move Icon over. He can float towards the top side of the map, and LNG can go really aggressive. Like, we have 5 members on this side of the map. Someone on your team is answering bot. Let's push in. They get vision control, and then once they've established that, they can just kind of force EDG to play into them, because anytime they find those flank angles, those access to players like Viper to scout, it puts them in a difficult position. I think the critical thing to think about in team fights is if you come from one direction, you're dealing with Plays, you're dealing with the ultimate from Aphelios, you're dealing with Emperor's Divide, it is very hard for LNG to win on the back of that. If you're coming in from a flank, all of those abilities lose so much value. So I want to see LNG setting up for these around the Baron. Whenever they want to start the fight, I want to see Tarzan, I want to see Ale, I want to see Lwandy, finding those creative angles.
Especially Lwandy, right? Dead Man's Plate gives you the opportunity to reposition. Play around the skirts in vision that EDG might not have, and pretty much get that amazing showstopper that gives you into everyone else as well. But I like that you talk about flanks here, Aux, because for LNG, they have the possibility to do so. We know that these 2 item players should be getting more confident here around the next couple of objectives. And even if Scout over pushes like this, Banshees fell down. Lwandy hitting the angle you talked about. Showstopper though, can they kill Scout before the TP's in the back end? Because that's a beautiful ultimate into the hands of a Honey Bear. Scout's over, scuttles around. What the hell? He's devoured up by Flandre, still alive. Flandre trying to save his big brother, but Tarzan's on top. Viper can't get there in time. And EDG, in a matter of seconds, lose 2 more.
They find the approach. They get on Scout. Now, they have to be a bit cautious about coming into this Baron because Viper's still a threat. Your ult comes through.
That's a good little ulti, though, from Viper as he flashes away. He's got Infernum for the AoE, but he's just taken down. LNG given 3 kills as EDG scatter, and it may just give it over to Baron.
Yeah, and with only Meiko alive, there's no way they contest this one. LNG are putting the pedal to the metal right now. They find the good approach. They find the angle onto Scout, who's a little bit too far forwards, and they're able to secure a bunch of kills on the Baron, and now in a really comfortable position to bounce back in this game too. We'll get a replay, and it's a slow approach, I'll be honest. Scout survives for a long time. They have to first burn the spell shield. He's then able to find a lot of space using the alcove thanks to his ult, and it nearly looks like disaster for LNG, but then the Realm ult comes in. Tarzan comes in. They start chasing down these targets, and, you know, Flandre does a good job of keeping him alive for a bit longer, but there's just really nowhere to go when Diana can go for, you know, the flash, the proto bell, and then the ult as well. I mean, sorry, not the ult, the E to close the distance.
And then Aux, they tried to fight this as well, but Flandre, as you said, when Tahm Kench is, you know, not ahead, not in a comfortable position like he is in this game, he can get bursted down, and proof's in the pudding right there.
I mean, this is the thing, is that game 1, EDG were in a comfortable spot because Scout and Viper were really fed. And they only have those 2 primary carries, but it's fine because they were doing so much damage, and even Jiejie on the Olaf was monster strong. But here, we're seeing LNG. They have this fed Diana, this fed Ryze, this strong Ashe. We have the Renekton as well, who's still a threat in the game. And as a result, it's just very difficult for EDG to find space in the fight. And the second you take Scout out of the equation, I mean, we even saw that in game 1. When EDG were massively ahead in that, but there was that bot lane fight where Scout wasn't there, LNG made it look close. And because they got the pick here on Scout, it just felt like there wasn't enough in the tank for EDG to fight through. And now LNG, they have that massive lead. They got 3 dragons. They can start to establish control, and that 1-3-1 with the Baron, with a Ryze, is really powerful to do so.
I mean, a Ryze with 2.5 items, 4-1 after those fights as well for Icon. Never mind the 50 CS disadvantage. I mean, he's more than made up for that with the kills and the plays that he's made here with the Realm Warps. I want to point out as well, Tarzan's been farming a Storm all game, up on Jiejie this time around, and when it was about Battle of the Junglers here in this series, Tarzan has bounced back really nicely. It has been a comfortable early game for him. And I like that LNG here, have made the proactive moves. It's 24 minutes in the game. They're not slowing down, and they're keeping to put pressure on with the Baron power play.
And I think it's important. The momentum for them is very vital, because if you slow down, if you give too many windows, there's still a concern of that range disadvantage between the compositions that can cause issues, but they aren't stopping, not for a moment.
Jiejie on a ward almost caught out. Dark Passage just in case. Scout over the wall. But it is Icon who's going to stand on the sideline. You talked about the 1-3-1. Look at Arley. No one matching him. Flandre has to use the Abyssal Dive to get there. And Scout's able to wave clear here, but it's just damage ticking down on these turrets, and not little that EDG can do.
Yeah, I mean, EDG, it's so hard to engage onto this Renekton, and essentially he's just going to allow the cannon minion to do enough of the damage, and he can walk up. EDG are in this full defensive mode. There's a 2-level difference between top laners, between junglers, between AD carries. It's a massive disadvantage for the side of EDG, and all these champions just feel so much weaker. We talked about the fact that Scout has this massive CS lead, but the reason is because he's going to be farming up the jungle camp. So it's Jiejie that suffers. He's going to be farming up the waves, so it's Flandre who suffers. They've put all these resources into the Scout basket, and he absolutely has to be the big carry in these team fights, because he's the only one really on par with his opponent, who's the only one who's actually got this sort of XP advantage. Everyone else is really struggling on EDG picking up the scraps. And I think that's the thing. If LNG finds Scout, if they pick him off first, I don't think EDG have it.
Yeah, that's right. And they fall to pieces, right? Even with Viper. Viper was able to pick up some bits of turret plating from memory in that bottom lane, but not as much as game number 1, where he was in a very comfortable position. Viper matching CS, 2 items here, but it is an Ashe who's 006, who has the wit's end, who'll be able to blast through people like Scout, even Flandre and Jiejie with on-hit damage. So for LNG, a comfortable game number 2, but we want to see how this closes out. We want to see how this game's ended, because it won't be through Sol. It could be through something like Elder, something like the next Baron here, Aux. What's next? What should we be looking for LNG to really push this further?
I think EDG could end up giving up Sol. It depends on whether they think it's a favorable fight. I think some of the Sols you definitely don't want to. I will say, though, as far as Cloud Souls go, this is actually an alright one for LNG. The extra movement speed for Tarzan, really nice when he ults. I wonder as well, just the 10% movement speed you get actually helps you find these flank angles. So not useless. I think there is some value in Cloud Soul. It's sometimes underrated, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's as impactful as, an Infernal Soul, because it just flat isn't. And so if EDG can't approach it, can't find a good angle, maybe they give it up. The big thing is, though, a second Baron would be super hard to deal with. And eventually it's going to get to that Elder point, and that will be a big problem. But honestly, I'm looking at EDG's items. 3 items now for Scout. He has that Void Staff. We've nearly got Viper on 3 items himself with an Infinity Edge. If we're talking about points where you're trying to find a way back in the game, this could be closing in on it.
Really could. I mean, again, we're comparing to last game where what we saw was 3-item EDG looking comfortable. There's a massive gold disparity, which puts this matchup off balance, but it is, again, something to keep our eyes on and just keep checking in with, especially since the game has lulled down a little bit before this next dragon. LNG resetting for the time being. It's top lane and mid laner alike, but EDG are doing the same here. And I wonder if the Infinity Edge will be there before this dragon fight, or if there's even going to be a fight. As you said, EDG might not look for it. EDG might not care. Jiejie is hanging around the mid lane for now, and pings are going down because Baron spawns at essentially the same time as Dragon. 20 seconds earlier, but they're both going to be up on the map.
And that's the thing, is that, if LNG get Baron, really rough for EDG. If they get Cloud Soul, still pretty rough for EDG. But EDG, it's like, if they pick up Dragon themselves, all they're doing is denying. They're not really getting too much value. Whereas if they get the Baron, at least it's like a lot of gold, a lot of XP, potential to shove in. The main thing is they all look at this mid priority. They have that tower down, but look at the angles LNG are approaching from. You can see that they're trying to look for those flank opportunities They know that if they just run straight at EDG, it's a bit rough.
Oh.
But it's a Realm Warp. They're going for the Baron.
Yeah, but they've done it. But the thing is, they're spotted on a ward. Can they do it fast enough? The Realm Warp play, it's already gone. It's done. Jiejie! No, he can't steal it in time. It's Light who secures the Baron as EDG. Now 5 members in the river. Ali's already popped the dominance, and now the question is whether LNG want to continue forward. They've picked up the Baron and Lwandy on the biggest flank angle. EDG start the fight, but Tarzan on top of Scout. He has to flash away. The core member hit down by Lwandy, but LNG sent back with a beautiful Emperor's Divide. Viper trying his hardest, but Light hitting away with a big volley. LNG get low, but haven't lost anyone else. Scout firing, but it's Tarzan who cleaves him in half.
They find a great angle there. The Realm Warp onto the Baron. Super creative to come out from EDG to instantly burst that down. And then we see EDG in a rough spot. They can't just give over the dragon as well. It would be a disaster, but there was no way for them to escape. And you can see as LNG pushed forwards in that pincer movement. We saw Lwandy coming from one angle. We saw this Arlay flying from the other, and Tarzan with that. And there was just nothing EDG could do. And now LNG, they don't quite have enough time to end right now, but they'll pick up that dragon. They'll pick up a bunch of structures on top of that. And EDG are looking rough with it over 10k gold deficit, 13,000 at this point.
At 30 minutes into the game, let's put scaling out of the back of our mind, because at this point, LNG are going to be an item and a half up on everyone. 5-1 and 3, 3-0-8, 3-0-7, rattling off numbers of the scoreline of LNG after this play was beautiful from Tarzan.
Yeah, you see the peel coming out that slows them down, but then Arlay's jumping forwards. Lwandy comes in for the flank angle, and it's just so hard for EDG. Even with a good Emperor's Divide like this, you see Light flashing forwards onto Viper. You can remember actually in the last game where it was the other way around, where Viper was the one winning that 1v1 against AD carries. Light is now so strong, and Tarzan is just consistently finding that value. This is what we wanted to see from Tarzan. This is why we highlighted that jungle matchup. When Tarzan gets fed, when he gets ahead, when the team can play for him, he is just a monster.
He's commanding, right? Tarzan has always been commanding when he finds himself a lead. It's just about getting to that point, but now that we're here in this game, is he's heading for a jungle horizon, as he's got 10 stacks on the Magi's. I mean, what can you say wrong at this point for LNG? You pulled out the 13k gold lead. Gold is so much in LNG's favor that we're just going to stop talking about it, because we're pretty much at full items here for the AD carry, bar the control ward in the last spot. And LNG Orcs grouping around bottom side, trying to put the finishing touches to take us to a game 3.
I mean, I think the big thing is last fight from there to now, Viper finishes Infinity Edge. Light sport a whole nother item. He just picked up a Phantom Dancer. So considering they already won that fight, things have just been compounded more. And now EDG are playing that base defense where they're clumped up, using their base walls kind of to their advantage. And you can see this is actually a little bit of a difficult point for LNG, just trying to force through the base, because it's hard to find flanks in a team's base, right? That's pretty distinctly obvious. There's not very many angles to approach, which is why they are playing this 4-1, right? They have the 4 members mid, they have Icon pushing in the bot lane, but still, it isn't the easiest angle to approach. They're kind of relying on those top lane minions to do some of the work for them.
I mean, that's going to do half the damage to a Nexus turret. Scout has to position. LNG looking for that inhibitor, but at this point, EDG still have so much wave clear. That's the other thing. While it is looking hopeless in game 2, I'm waiting for that finishing moment, because EDG's wave clear never really slows down, especially with Infernum as Lwandy Hex flashes over the wall. They're in a choke as the inhibitor turret looks to go down, and this is where it begins, maybe where it ends. Facebreaker onto Viper. Emperor's Divide does nothing. Arlay's into the back line, and it's all over. Viper drops to the dirt as the moonfall is all falling around EDG. LNG burning health bars, though, as Scout still lives. Arlay into his face, though, and that's all it takes. LNG will take us to a game 3 and show us that this team is warming up the playoffs.
And this is what we're hoping for from game 1, but they find the momentum in game 2. They find the mid-game spike. They managed to lean on Tarzan. They managed to find the momentum. And EDG, it just felt like they were playing too much for that slower paced game. We talked about in game 1, the 2 items. They hit that point, they were like, it's go time. By the time they got to 2 items, you know, we were looking at the side of LNG having 2.5, 3, and they just never caught up from there. It felt like this is what LNG were going for in that game 1. This is kind of how they want to be playing the game out. And honestly, it just worked so well. I think the draft was better for sure, but the big difference was how they played it.
Yeah, it was the early game that came through, and Icon picking a kill up in the bottom lane. And then for LNG, I think, I can't remember the play there, Aux, but it was stable, right? It was never like they lost control. They were always just slowly building up. And then we got to a couple of those fights, and for EDG, they weren't at that point yet. They weren't at the comfortable point. And I have to point out that even though Ale did the most damage, I feel like Tarzan on this Diana was a huge point to talk about for this second game.
Yeah, I mean, the critical thing was we're talking about those backline threats, and with the Tahm Kench being behind, pretty much useless, right? With Jiejie also not being on the Olaf, who was hyper-fed, he wasn't really a factor. It was all on Scout and Viper on these carries, and we just had LNG just diving onto them. And as you said, Tarzan was one of those big players who was every time finding the backline access, and every fight it was like EDG are just running backwards. It's like they're on a treadmill trying to go in reverse. Not a very stable way to do it, and then they kept tripping over and just getting caught out, and it felt like the momentum kept building. And I really like the fact that LNG had good ideas about how to approach the team fights. There were still mistakes. Remember that Herald they threw down mid, which they kind of flubbed, but they didn't let that slow them down. They just kept pushing it, and they knew if we leave this, if we play it too slow, this game will go in EDG's favor. So let's keep the momentum. And I think critically you saw Ale doing so much damage on the Renekton. This is kind of the difference of those picks, where if they're fed, they look monstrous. If they're behind, you can't even see them.
That's right. And the dichotomy of LNG, I hope it continues into Game 3. Because the fact that we're going to a Game 3 for LNG's last series as a split, it is great. That's what we wanted here today. We saw adaptation from LNG. EDG have to bring something fresh coming through into game number 3, because if we see EDG run same comp and LNG just go, right, we'll run it back, then we could